Hey guys, what's up? My name is Kenise and welcome to my channel. If it is your first time here, if you're not new to this but you're true to this, Wagwan Girlish fam. Alright, so I know a lot of you are interested in home ownership, and one of the things that they recommend is that you have an attorney. Now, I'm pretty sure a lot of you out there have some questions like whether or not you really need an attorney, and then I don't know over here, so I always have your backup on the Girlish fam. So I decided to have a sit-down conversation with an attorney to ask her some important questions that you guys might find helpful. So if you're interested in seeing that video, then stay tuned. Alright guys, so like I said, I'll be having an attorney on here today. Her name is Ariane Barrett. And we're just going to be having a chit chat. There are a few questions that I had beforehand, as well as I asked you guys to let me know what are some of the things that you wanted to know. Okay, so I tried my best to kind of put all those questions together, so you may not hear your question specific, but if I feel like they were similar, then I'll kind of just condense and go ahead and summarize. Disclaimer, okay, I tried to film this video yesterday and I was having a lot of technical difficulties. So the only other filming time myself and Miss Barrett had was today when Elsa passed. So if you notice that the lighting not so 100, and if you hear look rain and thunderstorm and dog and all of them something, well, the dog them normal over here, so you hear. But if you're hearing all of that, please just ignore it and please just bear with me. This is the only time, like I said, that we both had that we could film outside of regular working hours and, you know, the whole madness. So without further ado, we're just gonna get right into it. Let go. By the way, make sure to just like, share, comment, and subscribe, because we'll have good content that will come on the channel. Like, yeah, you don't want to miss out. You don't want to miss it. Be a vibes over here, saying the Girlish fam. Alright, let go. Alright guys, so we're just going to go right ahead and welcome Ariane. I am so excited to film this video, like you guys have no idea, and I know a lot of you have been looking forward to it as well. So I'm just gonna have her go ahead and introduce herself so you guys can know who she is, like, you know? Go ahead.
Hi Kenise, thanks for having me. So my name is Ariane Barrett. I'm an attorney. I've been in banking and mortgage for over 10 years. I handle or deal with civil matters. Currently, I'm in the insurance industry. And I'm here today to help to answer whatever questions that you have or been asking Kenise as it relates to purchasing a property.
Okay. All right, so the biggest question or the most important thing, guys, I have the questions written down if you see me looking down. So the most important things everybody wants to know, because they hear say you need an attorney, but why do you need an attorney? So why is it even important to come and approach an attorney if I see land out there or I see a house out there? Suppose me know Mr. John and Mr. John decides I'm going to sell me. Oh, it's that me know Mr. John from a long time. Why do I even need an attorney? I can't trust him.
Well, Kenise, it is important to have legal representation, whether you're purchasing a land or you're selling a land. Many persons, especially in the rural areas, believe that you can basically sell land like you're selling a goat, or if you're buying a purse, some person believe you could basically buy the land just like that, and it's not an easy transaction. There are certain procedures that are required in order for your interest to be lodged, say for example, registered title on a title, to say that you are the true owner of the property. And so it is important that you get an attorney to assist you with whether you're selling the property or whether you are purchasing the property. It's also not advisable that if you are buying a property as the purchaser, that you use the same attorney that the person who is selling, or the person who is selling the property is using, which is the vendor attorney, in order to do your transaction to get that property. It's vital that you have an attorney to basically explain certain things, certain requirements, certain procedures as it relates to the contract, which is the sale agreement, which is binding between both parties. You would need to understand certain terms or certain clauses or special conditions that are there. As the attorney, we act to protect your interests as our clients, whether we're acting as the vendor attorney, which is the attorney that facilitates the selling of the property, or whether we're acting as the purchasing attorney that is the person who is facilitating you purchasing or buying the property as an individual. So our role as the attorney is to bring clarity to the layman, assist with saving in terms of any negotiation, protect your interests, ensuring that, you know, all the checks and balances are in place.
Okay. So let's say Mr. John is the one selling me and really am I gonna put a property, right? When I have an attorney, you guys will go ahead and do the relevant background check, like you said, to ensure that legal he can sell me the property.
Right. So our duty is that we would have to exercise due diligence. Even if we're acting as the vendor attorney, which is selling the property, we will have to make sure that that person has the interest to sell that property in terms of they're the owner, right? And they can sell the property. It's the same thing that we do as the purchasing attorney. We will do the title search. We will ask for the information from the vendor to see whether the person who has basically come forward saying that they're the owner or the true owner of the land, and so that they have that interest and that interest can pass from them if we're going to do the transaction. We do other relevant checks as the attorney in terms of as it relates to like the title search, other things as it relates to the SI report to see if there is any restrictive covenant that is there on the property. So there are certain things that the attorney will look at.
So let me ask you, call the word again.
The SI report is a surveyor's report. So it's a report that is done to check the borders, to see if there's any encroachments, to see if there's any covenant that is in breach. That may affect the sale. So when you are purchasing property, it's vital to have an attorney to look and to make the relevant checks, because it will affect the time in which the sale will complete. Because say for example there is a covenant that is in breach, then it has to be corrected. That in itself will take a period of time, and that will also take money. So those procedures will be explained, because certain mortgage institutions will not give out or lend the money unless the restrictive covenant is modified.
You see, that is very important to know, because even with me doing these housing developments, and even the latest one, which is Catherine Estates, they always tell you that you have to go through Parish Council in order to see, you know, what kind of additions can you do and within what boundaries. And I know I've seen places where people, they just go ahead and build regardless of whatever the boundaries are. But what you're saying now is if they do that and in the future they decide to go ahead and sell their property, they're going to be in problem, because when the seller come now and say, I want this, and they go to their attorney or the mortgage institution, they're going to say, no, this has to be in your best interest.
Right. So you'll find cases, especially if you're looking to purchase a home. Say this is separate from the houses that are being sold by HHA or NHT. Say you use, for example, certain institutions online where you look at the real estate agency and you're looking for places. You'll see things like, for example, a cash sale for a property in a particular location, say Kingston 20, for example, and you'll see cash only. Sometimes when you see cash only and they're not willing to go through a mortgage institution, it's because there's something wrong with the property. Either they have built up, or they're encroaching, or the border is not within the specific premises. And as such, it would affect the sale, because the mortgage institution won't give or hand over the money until the covenant is actually modified. So they will tend, as the seller in that instance, to only do a cash sale for like $23 million just to get rid of the property. so that that person, if they have to deal with that restrictive covenant, they would either have to tear down the high rising or go through the court process in order to pay the funds in order to have the modification. So it is.
So, all right. So the other question was, what is the role of the attorney? And I think we pretty much covered that. So it's basically to protect your interests as a person who's purchasing the property, and to just basically explain certain things to you, because there's a lot of terms, these legal terms. Because even when you attack, I mean, I said what you attack about. So I can just imagine this being in the documented form, just to ensure that everything is on the up and up. So you mentioned a sales agreement. So let's talk about that. Like, what exactly is a sales agreement?
So the sales agreement is the binding contract that facilitates the sale. This is usually done by the vendor attorney, that is the person who is selling attorney. They will draft the documents and they will state what are the terms and the conditions which stipulate the transaction. There are certain things as a purchasing attorney that we have to look out for, so you're not at a disadvantage, because you would not be expected to, as a layman, to understand what are the special clauses or understand what is being required of you. There are also certain things or conditions or penalties, I would explain it as, where if you fail to pay in X amount of time, what will happen, whether you lose the deposit that you have paid, which you usually pay initially along with the sale, the half cost of the sale of agreement. So there are certain things that we have to explain to you before you sign the document, because the sale agreement is signed by both the seller and the purchaser and their witness. So it is important that you have a purchasing attorney that will explain all that is required and what is being asked. And if we, as the purchasing, or if I'm acting as a purchasing attorney, see certain terms that I think is unfair, then I will request and I will explain to you what is required, and ask you what is it that you would like us to do. And on your instruction as the client, we will request that the vendor attorney either amend or come in to say that we're not in agreement. Can we, find even footing or whatever, so that we can come to terms, so we can proceed with the agreement. So we basically facilitate that.
Okay. All right. So, let's see. Even with me hearing all of this, right? This valuable information. What if I decide to just take it upon myself and say, you know what? I'm in a business. I can represent myself. Is there a situation where the purchaser or the buyer can do this on their own without an attorney? Is there ever such a scenario where I can feel like, I'm gonna need the attorney because, obviously it comes at a fee and all of that.
You're an attorney yourself, right? Or you have the expert knowledge. Say, for example, if you're purchasing a property, you can take on that risk to say that, okay, I don't want a purchasing attorney. So whatever falls on your plate or whatever you're put at a disadvantage, you will basically suffer whatever consequence may arise, right? Because that's just dependent on what is in the sale agreement. It could be a sale agreement that, maybe it doesn't have anything and you understand it, and so you can proceed. However, certain financial institutions, they will state whether it's a requirement, or I know of more than one financial institution that they will actually give you a waiver form now, which basically you state that you waive your right for legal representation as it relates to purchasing a property and taking out a loan, a mortgage loan through the institution. So you do have cases where that is concerned, where persons will forfeit having legal representation.
So what about all right, how NHC has a lot of these developments coming up, and HNJ has a lot of these developments coming up, which a lot of my followers, they're actually, that's what they're hoping for. Would you need an attorney in that instance?
I always say it's always best to have an attorney to explain the process so that you can understand. Because remember, having a purchasing attorney is assisting you so that you know what you're getting involved with. Not because, okay, it's not an ordinary or another person and it's a development means that you're going to understand what are the stipulations, what are the requirements, what is needed. And especially that most Jamaicans don't like to read, it's always best to have someone. No, but it's true. Persons don't like to read.
It's very true.
So you will have cases where you take on this property and you buy the house through NHT, and then when you look, you add on 3-4 more rooms to the property, and you're close to the border, and then when it comes on to certain things and you're being asked to take it down, or what is you're not aware of it, and in ignorance of the law is no excuse. So it's important that you basically understand the terms and the conditions and what is required, and that you have an attorney protecting your interests at all times.
Okay. Alright. If I like say I find something and I want to reach out to you, by the way, guys, I'll list her stuff down in the description box so that you can go ahead and reach out to her. Right. So if I want to go ahead and contact you, what are the documents that I would need? Because it's important for us to plan ahead and know what it is that we need when we're going to be going through this process. So what are some of the documents that you would need?
Documents in terms of what? In terms of you?
When I'm ready to purchase, what are the things that I would need to bring to you as a lawyer? What would I need to take to you?
Well, okay. Really, as the purchasing attorney, the transaction, what we really require is more liaising with the vendor's attorney. So usually when we take on a matter, we will have our own internal documentation to find out, like KYC compliance, how you're obtaining the funds, in terms of if you're going to a financial institution, if you're pre-qualified, like say NHT benefit. There are certain documentation that will be required. We'll also ask you to, like say, get the valuation so that we can know the value of the property and what the seller is going to basically be selling the property for, and ensure that it's not overstated and it's the correct or value for your money. So there's certain documentation that we will require as it relates to that, but we will need the information from the vendor's attorney, and the vendor's attorney will supply us also with that information. And we will make the necessary checks once you have identified where it is that you're planning to purchase. Really, if it's a case that you're going through a mortgage institution, the mortgage institution will give you a checklist. The loan officer will provide you with all the necessary things that they'll want in terms of your ID, your NIS, in terms of what is required, payslip, anything at all. So all of that documentation, once we have knowledge of what your intentions are, we will let you know what is required and what you will need to facilitate the process.
Oh, so you can just add. All right. You had mentioned a surveyor's report, and you had mentioned doing checks at the title office. Now, I'm pretty sure these things are not for free. So what would be the relevant fees or then costs that are involved in the sale of a home or land, whatever it may be?
Well, the surveys and the valuation, I'm not really certain as to what is the cost, because you'd have to go to a reputable valuator. I know that certain institution give you a panel of persons who they use as valuators, and they will tell you what are the charges as it relates to getting the valuation of the property done, and the same thing with the surveyor's report. So I'm not...
Sorry to cut you, but I feel like that is really dependent sometimes on where the property is located, that they give you the price, because I've known persons who have gone through the process, and then the first thing that they usually ask is, where is it located? So I don't know if some locations cost more money.
But well, you have to realize that because you would have had knowledge, or certain persons which would be in the industry for a certain amount of years, they will tell you. It's just like when you're going to go about in terms of doing a valuation for your car. Certain places, it has, if you're going through your insurance company, it has to come from certain places that is acceptable. The same thing with valuation of property, because you want to have accuracy. And so because of accuracy, they will tell you, okay, for X places, Y place, please use X, Y, Z, can use enterprises or so and so forth. Right? I mean, it's important to do that, because if it is that the property is not valued correctly, that also is, it's going to cause a little hiccup in the sale process transaction, in terms of when it gets assessed by stamp office. If you're required to pay more money as the purchaser, you would have, it will stipulate that in the sale agreement. So everything is important, and we will explain that to you, the ins and outs as it relates to the sale. But where fees are concerned, there are certain fees that are required to be paid by both parties. The sale agreement, which is, as I said before, is done by the vendor, which is the person selling the property. The sale agreement, it is 50-50 in terms of payment. So say, for example, the sale agreement costs $80,000. All right, say it costs $80,000, then you as the vendor or the seller would pay $40,000. The purchaser will pay the other 40. So it's split 50-50. You have letters of possession, also known as the utility letters, where at the ending of the process, it will say Kenny's is now the true owner, and it will be for JPS and for water commission. Right? That is also split between both parties 50-50. The same for registration fee, and that is done as well. You'll also incur other miscellaneous fees, where the attorney will explain the miscellaneous fees, like for bearer fees and so forth. You have that. You also have to consider the deposit money. Usually it's between 5 or 10%, depending on whether it's a cash sale versus you obtaining a loan. So that percentage of the purchase price, you'll also have to have that. Then you have transfer tax, which is only paid by the vendor's attorney, or by the vendor only, I should say, not the attorney, but the vendor, for the transfer tax. So you as the purchaser should not be paying that amount of money. So things like that, we will have to explain it to you when you're doing, because say, for example, someone will put that in the sale agreement that you're supposed to pay that or pay 50, then you will have signed that arrangement when you're not supposed to. So, the safeguard of protecting your interests is vital and necessary, where that is concerned.
Okay, and obviously your attorney fees are really something that we need to consider. But though, yes, man. But
yes, you're also going to need to pay the attorney, whether the attorney that is selling the premises or the attorney that is facilitating you purchasing the premises. So it's usually 3 to 6% of the purchase price. So that's dependent on the attorney. Some attorneys might say, okay, I'll charge you 3.5 or so. So it's dependent on the attorney where those fees are concerned.
And some attorneys charge like 10%, or it doesn't ever go that far?
Well, that's more like the commercial aspect. Usually they stay within 3% price range.
Okay, so then the sales agreements and all of those costs, and those will be determined by the attorney. But do you have any idea, like, for the transfer fees, and is that a set thing, or that is?
Those are, it's a set percentage based on the sale price. So it's not something.
There are percentages. Right. Oh, okay.
Set percentages. So as I said, that would be explained as it relates to those fees. So the attorney will explain to you how it's calculated.
Okay, interesting. So, all right. So I'm going into my bonus questions now, and I feel like we've answered some of those. Some said, how are the fees calculated? And as you said, that is a percentage. So I guess the more expensive the property, the more money that you have to pay. So we have to consider that. And how long does it take to close? Would that be something that's determined by the attorney, or would that really just be based on if you're using a lending institution, like how long they take to transfer the money? Or
well, so the sale agreement has that. Again, it has the time for completion. It's dependent on the sale, right? So it will state in the sale agreement whether it's 62 or it's 120 days. It will state what's the time of completion. However, note that you do have things that may affect the sale time, right? There may be things or challenges that you have that will hold up a sale. And as such, it may draw out the sale at a longer period because of certain challenges that happen. Like say, for example, say the title is lost, and so the vendor would have to do a lost title application in order to get the title, because at the end of the day, that's how it's registered in terms of if you're going through a loan facility or the ownership being passed to you. There's the restrictive covenant that will also hold up the process as well. The property is owned by Master Joe and his wife. Master Joe's wife is deceased, but it's not noted on the title. So the application for notation of death has to also be done. You can have other issues in terms of name change, the name defer, taxes, water bill issues. You have other things that may actually affect the sale. So, as I said, each matter will present its own issue. If there's a challenge, and the attorney will express what will happen and state the problems where the sale is concerned.
okay.
But the vendor attorney usually prepare the sale agreement, which would incorporate the completion time, and it will also stipulate when or amount of days in which they expect the sale to end or to get the undertaking, say if you're going through a financial institution. So all of that will be explained.
Okay. Let's see. There are some of the issues that can slow down the process. We answered that. When you're purchasing through NHG or HAJ, we did that as well. What are the steps to take after you discover the property that you want?
What do you mean in terms of that?
So say I've identified something just off the open market. What do I go, or what do I do from there? Do I go to the lending institution first and then seek out you, or CQ and then go to the lending institution, or it really doesn't matter?
Well, as it relates to that, if it is that you found the property, right, you need to, if say for example, the property doesn't cost a lot, and you know that you are in standing to do the purchase, then you know you can go directly to me as the purchasing attorney. But if you know that you're going to need financing, we will advise you, saying that it's best to get your eligibility letter, because you need to know if you'll be able to cover required for the sale to go through. So I don't think it's a set thing, but we usually recommend that you have all your I's and your T's crossed and all your I's dotted. So we will explain to you if you come and you have not sorted out yourself, to ask you, do you have the necessary financing? It's best maybe you go and get the eligibility letter to see if NHD will grant you this loan, or if a mortgage institution will grant you the amount that you need in order to get the property that you wish to purchase.
All right, so we've taken up enough of Miss Barrett's time. Thank you so much for coming on the channel and providing the information. It was truly helpful, and I really, really hope that my audience can benefit from this. I learned some things today, and I know that when they watch it, they're gonna learn something. They can see she have experience over 10 years or about 10 years. So I mean, she's not new to this. Much like the people on my channel, she's true to this as well. So as I said, guys, I'm gonna leave her information down below. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, guys, to get more amazing content like this. Share the video with your friends, because I'm pretty sure there's so many other persons out there who would find a value in this content. Again, Ariane, thank you so much. Is there anything you want to say before we leave?
Well, it was just nice being here today on your page. But I know there's nothing that I wish to say. That's all. But as I said, the information is there. Persons want to know the information. They just need to basically go through the necessary channels that are required, and safe shopping for your new home.
All right, guys, keep safe, and as always, walk good.